You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesday at TBH. Thank you everybody for being here. Welcome to all our viewers and listeners. Today, as always, we try to bring a special guest. And here today we have 6 of our therapists. We hope that basically you learn a little bit about who we are, what makes us unique, and what makes TBH different, and why you would want to bring your kids here.
My name's Rosia Morris, and I am a licensed mental health counselor. I've been working at TBH for about 1.5 years now, so that seems crazy, actually. I've been in the field for about almost 4 years now, and I specialize in some substance abuse in adults and teenagers, and my passion is working with tweens from ages, I mean, you know what tweens are, but 12 to 14 is like my favorite age to work with, in things such as depression, anxiety, and just any type of life transitions that a child or adolescent might be struggling with.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Daphne Pozo, and I am a registered intern for marriage and family therapy. I have been doing work in the field for the past, it's been a while, over 5 years. And so my specialty really is with teenagers and young adults. That's where I feel my passion really lays. And so at TBH, I've been for about a little over a year now. And so in my time here, I've run groups, I've done individual. I'm a huge believer in family therapy, so that's a lot of what I do as well.
I'm Dr. Lauren Stravenchuk, also a registered marriage family therapy intern, also certified addiction professional, which that's my population, is substance abuse. I like to work with families, very important, with the roles that we play, and my specialty in marriage family therapy is natural Bowen family systems, solution focus, things like that.
I'm Catherine Lewis. I am also a registered marriage and family therapy intern. I recently started working at the Bougainvillea House, and I love it. I really enjoy working with teens, and I think that's what really drew me here is all the work we do with the teenage population and their families. And like everyone said, we really, like to work with families because I feel that's where the most impact can be made when we all work, together collaboratively. I also really like working with couples and the parents of the teens that are struggling maybe with substance use or anxiety and depression. So that's kind of most of what I would say I enjoy, but I also like to work with children that are struggling with other serious mental health issues such as schizophrenia, things like that.
My name is William Barney. I'm a registered intern for mental health counseling. My specialty in the field, I would say more so depression and anxiety for teens and adults. I also do substance abuse as well. What originally drew me to the field was a need for helping others in general. As you know, as time goes on, mental health has become more and more prominent amongst us, and we're taking more of an active pathway towards it. So that's what kind of led me here.
Did want to mention this since it is something that I do find that I think is going to bring something different to the table, but I am almost close to being ADHD certified. So that is also something that we do at the Bougainvillea House. Really excited about that. I used to be a teacher for a couple of years. So that is something that I was passionate about. And I decided to get my certification in it. So I'm almost done with it. So should be done soon. And that way, if you find that your child or a child that or teenager, or in any case, adults too, many cases adults that haven't been diagnosed before. If you find that they're struggling with ADHD symptoms and are struggling in the classroom and things like that, we're also a good place to refer to. So just wanted to mention that because I forgot.
Well, I'm glad you did because that's another thing about our team. We all have a lot of different unique backgrounds, certifications. Like I said, we have a vast array of unique and dedicated, compassionate people here.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, this is just very open for Q&A as well for our audience. Any questions that might pop up, this is your chance to ask the experts Let us know what makes them tick, what makes them different. Again, what makes us unique as a team. And that's the focus and that's the goal. We always talk about how wonderful the Bougainvillea House is, but unless you know the back end, which is the important side of it, who are the ones that are actually working with the kids, I mean, that's really where you're going to get your feel good and understand and learn that this is a place you want to be. And we know that being in the medical field, in any part of the medical field, you know, we have to be our own patient advocate. You know, we have to make sure we do our due diligence, do our research, you know, educate ourselves as much as we can so we make the right decisions for our families, especially for our kids. And we always want to find the experts, find the ones who are going to be the best to help us get through whatever troubles or struggles that we're going through. And obviously that doesn't discriminate, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, who you are, what your ethnic background, what your race or anything else, you know, anxiety, depression, these behavioral health conditions does not discriminate.
What drew me to TBH in general, first off, is the population that we work with, which is obviously young adults and teenagers, which I love working with that population. But in addition to that is the fact that we have a pretty amazing team. I can honestly say that this group of individuals is amazing. They're very passionate about what they do. Not only that, they're amazing coworkers who I know, you know, if I'm struggling with a client or if something's going on with a client that I need help with, I know I can go to them for any sort of assistance.
I love the team. They're awesome. And like Harris said, we all have different backgrounds. So if one of us have a client that we have maybe like just we need some little bit more information on, we'll just go and ask one of the other people that maybe have more experience in it. And I also like the variety of population that we have. We work with kids, adolescents, adults. I mean, we have all ranges of populations, ages, and I think it's great because it's interesting and, you know, it keeps us on our toes, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely say I have to agree with, you know, both of the doctors over here. We have a pretty awesome team, and like everyone said, we're very diverse. You know, we all have different backgrounds, different places we've worked, different areas. You know, I also love, like I said, the different population we have to work with. Specifically, I love working with teens and substance as well because I have a long history working in substance, and I feel, you know, getting the education and them getting the help at this age is so crucial, and it can really, you know, change where their life goes. So I love being able to work with teens in that way and some, you know, children as well. But yeah, the team's really awesome, very supportive. You know, I know whenever I look forward to coming into work because I got such a great team with me supporting me, and yeah, it's a really awesome place.
What originally drew me to TBH was, besides the diversity, just the support. In this field, it's really important to have a very good support system. And I know that if ever anything's going on with one of my clients, I need to like refer to, let's say, like the clinical director or anyone else, I feel comfortable being able to go there because there's open communication there. And you can tell a lot about a place by if there's open communication within the workplace, then you know that the therapists themselves are going to have very good open communication. So definitely the diversity, the support, the mix of cultures that we have here. There's different people, ethnicities, different backgrounds, orientations. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like all come, all are welcome. So that's the main thing that mostly drew me here.
Something that I love is, you know, we are a nonprofit, and, you know, I've worked in nonprofit and for-profit. And what I love about nonprofit is you're getting the entire community involved. And I mean, we've been seeing a lot of that with even our webinars weekly, that we're, you know, connecting with so many different people locally and nationally that want to make a difference and want to make a change. So of course I want to reiterate, you know, what the team has said about, you know, the support that we feel for one another, that we can rely on each other. But it's also what we can give back to our community is really what attracted me to TBH, and being so involved, going to different events, going to the schools, being more involved in preventative care is probably the most important thing that I've seen is, you know, not just waiting for someone to be at a 10 or to already have an addiction or to already have a problem. It's addressing it before it becomes a problem. It's reteaching the belief system about therapy is that you don't have to come here because you're in crisis mode. You could come here because you love to connect with your therapist. You love to connect with us and, you know, make a change. So.
And sometimes, speaking of that, where people kind of forget. You think of therapists as that when you have a real a major underlying condition versus maybe it's just that milestone that you need a little help getting through. We see that in the college phase, right? That whole transition from high school to college, but you also have those other milestones when you're going from elementary to junior high. You're getting into the teens where we specialize in, right? So there's all these different milestones within our life that sometimes we just need a little help, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's one of the big stigmas that we try to get rid of, right? There's nothing wrong with needing a little help. I mean, we do that with everything else. What's wrong with a little help in behavioral or just, again, walking us through and help directing us or giving those coping skills to be able to just transition. There's nothing better than to be able to do things smoothly, right? As opposed to, crash mode and then jumping that hurdle and all that. So that's the benefit, and that's the beauty of having a great team like this. Now we know that there's different forms, approaches to therapy. I mean, and we have a whole bunch of different styles here. So what would you guys say it's your approach to therapy?
And we don't have to go.
It doesn't have to be the same circle. We can break up that cycle,
I'll go. So I would say that I practice from like a collaborative language system or like a narrative sort of form of therapy. And sort of what I aim to do is, through life, we learn different things about ourselves based on our experiences. And these narratives sometimes can be very negative. We start to feel these negative things about ourselves, because of what maybe we heard or some trauma that we experienced. And so what I like to do is work with my client to restructure that narrative. So they can look back, and instead of highlighting all the negative, they can highlight the positive from those chapters, and see their strength in those chapters. So I would say that would be my main approach, but I also work in a lot of different areas, when it comes to working with families, family systems, looking at how everyone relates to one another, and that's a big thing too, is the relational aspect, where everything is a relationship, even relationships to the substances someone might be abusing, or the relationship to yourself, how you feel about yourself. So a lot of my work is very relational, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, and going off that, just because I am we're marriage and family, the three of us are marriage and family therapy. So it's very much, for me, being a systemic therapist, where even if I'm seeing, the individual person, I still think of them in relation to their families, their friends, their romantic relationships, whatever is going on in their life. So in that sense, I see myself, as a systemic therapist, but also, I guess, if I were to pick one theory, I find myself more Bohemian than anything else, just like Lauren, where, I like to see what patterns have happened in families through generations. And I think that's very important, because a lot of the ways in which we behave is because of what's happened in prior generations, and we're not even fully aware of that. So a lot of what I do is exploring family dynamics, family relationships, things like that.
I've honestly found that I really love CBT and solution focus. Those are my two go-tos. And I think that's mostly because I do enjoy, that word is weird to use when it comes to depression and anxiety, but I do enjoy helping those that struggle with depression, anxiety, and just negative thoughts in general. So I find that using cognitive behavioral therapy helps me to help the client identify negative thinking errors and really focus on how to adjust their perspective. And Veronica, I know you mentioned earlier that sometimes it's not, it's not even a serious underlying issue. It might just be a small adjustment that needs to be made, maybe during a life transition or something like that. So I find that CBT helps with that. And so I really enjoy that aspect of emotions and, negative thinking errors, and kind of just helping to bring more positivity. And then with solution focus, I really like looking at the exceptions. When is it that you're not feeling depressed? When is it that you're not feeling anxious? Let's look at those moments and identify what was going on so that we can look at triggers. So I think those are my two go-to, aspects of therapy, or modalities of therapy. And other than that, honestly, positive regard. I just love like being empathetic, and sometimes it just takes a listening ear a lot of times to sit with your client and meet them where they're at, and just being able to show that we're there for them, and that there are people that care for them. So yeah.
All of us utilize cognitive behavioral therapy. We just use different modalities within that, which I think is pretty cool too, because you know, majority of you are group facilitators, so you would be meeting with a teen, and that teenager is going to get 4 different types of modalities within a given day, between their individual therapist, their group facilitator, interacting with all of us on a different level. So that's pretty amazing. So with levels of treatment, we are an outpatient facility, which means no one, including us, we do not live here. Everyone asks that, we do not live here, although it's very nice. So with outpatient, we have within that set, we have different levels of care. So the highest level of care that we offer here is for our teens, which is called intensive outpatient level of care. And what that entails is 9 hours. So that would be 3 different days that we are offering group, as well as they meet with their individual therapist for session, as well as they'd be meeting with their therapist to do a family session. We mandate actually that families participate. That's what also makes us different and why we truly are a family therapy center. Our other level of care that we offer is outpatient level of care, and that's for both adults, for teens, for kids. At outpatient level of care, you're meeting with your therapist about once or twice a week, depending on the need and what's going on and the assessment that my team gives, as well as what I really love that we do is what we call maintenance. So when you're starting to see a lot of growth and change, we're going to see that too, and we want to celebrate that, which is why you're not being seen every single week for, let's say, the rest of your life. We don't do that. We pride ourselves in seeing your commitment, your growth, your accomplishments, and you know, that you step down just like, you know, you're walking down steps in your home. You're making changes, and we see that in you as well.
When we talked about the 8 hours, that's a week.
Yes.
So that's not just from beginning to end, it's 8 hours. So that's, or 9 hours, that's a week, you know. So the intensive outpatient is that every week, and then the duration is based on you know, however the assessment is done. And individually is just, again, once or twice a week, and those are generally 45 minutes, an hour session, right?
Yeah, 50 minutes.
So,
50-minute sessions. William, you had something you wanted to add.
So I was going to say, for starting with IOP, intensive outpatient, which is normally reserved more so, of course, for substance abuse. So what you could expect from me, from like my personal experience, we start off with addressing, of course, the substance abuse. And then as time goes on, as a particular client goes through the various groups and they have the individual sessions, after we found out pretty much like what was the cause, what got you started into doing maybe like a form of substance, like what was the root cause of it? Because no one just wakes up and says, I'm just going to do this. Something led to that. We start off addressing the main problem. So the main problem is the substance abuse. Then as time goes on over the course of either, you know, the weeks or the months, I start to shift more from the substance abuse into more of the emotional aspect. What happened? Like, let's dig down deep and find out what exactly have you been dealing with that's underneath the substance. It's like an iceberg. You see the very top of it, but underneath is an entire whole portion that you generally don't see towards the end. So let's say like when we're getting closer to outpatient, or I should say when we shift from intensive outpatient to outpatient, then I start to focus more on life skills. So now that you've been dealing with this, now that you've gotten past maybe gaining back the trust with your parents, maybe now that you've started to get things back on track within your life, let's talk about some of the things you may anticipate. What's next? If you're a teen, are we thinking about college? Are we thinking about work? Are we thinking about like what are we looking at within the next maybe year or two, within the next 5 years, the next 10 years, to get something planned? That's for IOP. For outpatient, for OP, that's completely different. Because for someone may come in, sometimes they may need someone just to generally talk to. Maybe they feel like they're not being heard. Maybe they're dealing with some sort of depression or anxiety. Maybe there's something going on in their life. Maybe they're having issues at work. Same thing almost with IOP. Let's address the big issue first, and then we see what can we do to modify, what can we do to change. And the key word is we. It's not me, it's not just you, it's us as a team. So that you learn to have that support, you learn to communicate. And then from there, we slowly move towards, do you feel good enough? Because the whole point of therapy, guys, is never to stay in therapy. The whole point of therapy is to get to a stable enough level and then discharge because you have to do things on your own. So that's the way I approach therapy from the IOP level of care and the OP level of care. They have some similarities, but the end goal, of course, is do you feel stable enough? Do you feel like you've gotten more control over your life? Do you feel like you are empowered enough to start the journey on your own, or I should say continue the journey on your own? Because I didn't start it with you. You started from the moment you were born, but now you're probably at a rough spot. Maybe you're at a crossroads. So that's the way I approach IOP, and then that's the way I approach OP. So intensive outpatient and outpatient.
Poetic.
Yes.
Just to reiterate, like you said, well, you know, the goal isn't to keep someone here. The goal is to provide them with coping skills and tools to advance the work that we started here. So we help build that solid foundation, and it's your job then to continue on that road and do what you need to do.
Next question says, do the providers speak any other languages? And I'll kick it off because I speak Spanish.
Yes, I also speak Spanish. So Daphne and I speak both English and Spanish.
Yes.
Spanglish does not count.
Let's see. How young of a client do you work with?
The youngest I've had is 8.
I think we have a 5-year-old right
I
now.
think we have a 6-year-old now.
Yeah, we have a 4 or 5-year-old.
We have a 5-year-old.
Our focus and age, I mean, of course, we can see, you know, any age from when we're looking at adults and all that, that we have a window, because our where we excel and our target group is going to be the children, the young adolescents, the young adults, and that is as young as now 4 or 5 up to 26 is pretty much the age bracket. And there's obviously different methods and different ways of the counseling that's needed, because on the younger ones, it's not so much the speech therapy that you guys could obviously talk more about than me. But so we do have, you know, young ones, but that's our demographic group that we want to focus on. I mean, we know that there's a big issue. There's a very large issue with behavioral health, especially here in Broward County. So there's not enough of these therapists out there, and we're not even putting a dent in it. And that's our focus. And that's one of the beauties of being a non-for-profit, that gives you that peace of mind. Our focus is not about that corporate world and making the Fortune 500. Our goal is to better our kids, you know, build a community where they can actually survive and strive. And that's our focus. So, and having a team put together, there's actually one other therapist, and then we have our psychiatrist as well. That gives us, that allows your kids to be able to find who is going to work for them, you know, because they all have great backgrounds. Their methods are on spot, but it's also on how you connect with your therapist. And that's key. That's key, because for them to excel, for them to be able to graduate and move on, they need to be able to connect.
To add on to that, we do offer play therapy, especially for our littles, and they absolutely love having session in our sensory room, which we're pretty proud of.
Right.
Our sensory room, so just to explain a little bit, so sensory room was originally created especially for assisting children with special needs, but when they looked more into it, studies found that not only does it help with special needs, it helps with anxiety, depression, especially when you're really young and you're coming into therapy and you're not really sure what to expect. You might get a little overwhelmed. We've had kids where they just love going into the sensory room. It helps them open up. There's lights, there's different things to do in there to keep them occupied. And it takes the sole focus off of them, so they feel a little less pressure. We even find it really helpful when we do a family session, and if it got really intense, we're like, hey, you want to go relax in the sensory room a bit? Take your focus on something else. So from the minute you walk through the door, our goal is to keep that therapeutic environment, even when you're not meeting with your therapist, when you're just relaxing, when you're grabbing a snack, when you're getting something, you know, to read, everything from the minute you walk in. The goal is to have that therapeutic environment. And we take that very seriously. We know there's a lot of things in this world, especially now, that we can't control. So we work really hard to create a safe, relaxing environment within those walls that we can control. And the kids respond really well to it. In fact, our teens get jealous and they demand
I did a
that
session
they have
yesterday.
it too.
Yeah, with the team.
Yeah, we do group in there too when we have the smaller groups. Obviously, right now with COVID, we wouldn't do that, but they are looking forward to the day where they can have group in there again. So,
And you mentioned how with what's going on today, well, if we look at, you know, the isolation and everything and the virtual learning, which it seems like we might continue that path for a while. What do you feel, in your opinion, what would you think how this is going to affect our kids, if more so than they already are affected, especially those that have, you know, some anxiety and depression already? Do you see where, you know, how could it, is it going to escalate, or when would, I know we're seeing a lot of that now, because it's been what, I don't even know how many
4
months.
months, all blurring together. It's still
it's
2020, that's
blending.
what I know.
It continues to blend, but we know that sometimes things take time for it to blow, right? And we're starting to see that increase right now. But I mean, what else do you see that with everything that's going on, how that's going to affect our kids specifically?
I think that because things are so out of the ordinary, and it seems like I wouldn't say there's a lack of structure, but there's been a change of structure. One thing that I've seen for sure is sleep patterns. Sleep patterns have been a very big one. Children tend to, when I say children, I mean if you're under the age of 18, children staying up to 3, 4 in the morning, which is causing mental health issues. You'll see increases in anxiety, increases in depression, irritability. And if you have, let's say, a 6 or 7-year-old, they can articulate as an adult can, saying like, I feel tired. Instead, well, you see the temper tantrum, you'll see them be depressed, you'll see them not say anything, maybe they're not eating. We can definitely see a trend in that. When it comes to, let's say, our adult population, you can definitely see increases in, once again, anxiety and depression. The difference is that it's more felt because we have people being furloughed. We don't know what's going on. We're seeing anxiety with the virus itself. People may not want to leave out of their house. People's trying to stay in their house for 4 to 5 months, which I understand taking precautions, but we don't want to go into the realm of being paranoid and where we're like just cooped up and we're almost being like almost antisocial. So there are some negativity or some negative things that can definitely be stemming from the whole COVID-19, but at the same time, I do see a lot of positivity. I see a lot of unification. People, you have to communicate more of what's going on. We're seeing people actually seek out help, coming to professionals, you know, such as ourselves, saying like, hey, I don't know how to handle this, and can you help me with that? I see that. I also take all of this, the year 2020 in itself, it's something that we all need to kind of learn from, and it's called change. Yes, we were used to things working pretty much the same from 2019, going all the way back with small minor changes, but there's never been anything on a global event where the world stopped. And so what do we have to do? We have to adapt to this new way of life. We have to overcome it. We also have to keep in mind that things will go back to normal. And when change happens, it never happens exactly as you want it, and it's never going to be exactly the same. And we have to kind of learn to incorporate that into our lifestyle and say like, hey, there is a change, but not what happened to me, but what can I do with this? This is the time when people should be trying to seek out maybe more education, take on new hobbies, anything to keep yourself occupied and to come out of this entire situation better than when you first entered into it. So that's the main things that I see. There's some negative, but I also see a lot of positivity.
Rocio, what would you say is what you feel is the biggest concern with the youth population now?
So with the youth population, I do feel like what I have seen the most, especially in working at TBH, is kind of like a disconnect between like the parents and the children. And I think that the children are finding it very difficult to express themselves and kind of just express what their experiences are to their parents, even to friends and things like that. I mean, I think we've all experienced a little bit of like, I guess we always say stigma, right, of mental health, but I do find that like with the younger population, social media, things like that is constantly like showing the good side of things. And so I do find that a lot of the youth right now is struggling with just kind of keeping up with one another and trying to always stay on the positive, even like they're struggling to stay on the positive even when there's bad things happening and they're not expressing those things. So they're kind of just shoving it down, and it's creating kind of also turmoil in the households because the parents aren't understanding why their children are behaving in certain ways and things like that. So that's a lot of what I've experienced with TBH, and just trying to get the parents to understand the children's perspective and the children to learn how to better express themselves and understand reality a little bit better, especially when there's so much kind of pushing against them.
And we have one question for you, Daphne. We know that one of the areas that you're involved with is the LGBTQ related difficulties. And we know that kids have all kinds of pressures coming at them from all areas. Is there a different approach to counseling when you're dealing with sensitive issues like that?
That's a big question.
Yeah,
And that's only, and I know that that's just one sensitive, but there's so many.
Right.
But
So I think that for me, I guess it's not that I'm a different therapist, because as a therapist, I'm very much, try to provide, a supportive, very non-judgmental atmosphere where I think clients feel like they can tell me whatever's on their mind or whatever it is that they're going through. I know that I do a lot of, personal work with regards to LGBTQ plus issues, just for me to be as knowledgeable as possible, because, there are definitions and terms that are coming about that are new. And so I always try to be as aware as humanly possible. When it comes to, I've worked with LGBTQ plus adults and just helping them, figure out what it is that they're trying to figure out at the time, as well as, their sexual identity, their sexual orientation. When it comes to teens, it can be really hard for teens just because they're afraid to come out. They don't know how to come out. But just being as supportive as possible with them through that process, I think helps. I actually did my doctoral project on LGBTQ plus Latinx teenagers. And it was found that as long as there's one person in their life who is supportive, that does a world of difference. It reduces suicide rates by like 3 times.
Right.
So just being that one supportive person in their life, that's what I try to be.
Yeah, that's important in so many ways. And even being in South Florida, which is, we're like the melting pot of everything. Anything goes here, and we still see that, these sensitive issues that make a big impact. So it's good to have, that knowledge and that background and that diversity. I know that there was a question that we get this question all the time, the difference between where we talk about substance use as opposed to substance abuse. So if you guys could just explain to everybody the main difference, because we know that we're not an inpatient, but even from an outpatient standpoint, what the main difference is, because a lot of times as a parent, we might say, well, my kid doesn't abuse, he might have a beer every once in a while, or they vape, and they do this or that, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. But so just so that you could explain to everybody what the main difference is between the substance use versus abuse.
I'll give sort of, like I said earlier, I look at everything in that relationship context a lot. So, I think when you look at it as it's an unhealthy abusive relationship where that substance is becoming, it's coming between that client and their family, the things they usually enjoy, they're not doing anymore. Schoolwork, it's getting in the way, and it's essentially you become the substances, it's in charge. It rules you in that sense. I feel like that's when it becomes a very serious situation, and it's abuse, because it's keeping them from enjoying things they used to enjoy. It's essentially becoming an abusive relationship. And I think, looking at that context, you can really start, and I noticed that with my teens too, and I tell them, look at it, hold yourself accountable. Are you losing out on time with friends that you used to have? Are you no longer, skateboarding as much, you're doing things you like, that's when you have to check in with yourself and say, okay, this is a problem, I have a problem, because, it's easy to get lost in it, and it becomes that abuse. So I think it's important to have, teach teens especially to check in with it and say, this is not okay, and even check in with their friends when they see friends doing those things too.
I'd like to add to that. I want to break it down a little bit further, because it's also very different when you're working with, say, someone under the age of 21 versus someone above the age of 21. So I can tell you right now, anyone that comes in that tells me that they drink or use some sort of drug and they're over the age of 21, they say, but it's social, it's recreational, it's not a big deal. That's the automatic go-to, I think, for a lot of adults. And with teens, so with teens and adults, we have misuse, we have abuse, and then we have dependency. And that's the full spectrum. That's for every age, any age. With misuse, let's say you were prescribed a medication and you're misusing that medication. It's not necessarily abuse. Let's say you forgot to take your medication this morning and you take it later that day and it throws you off the next day. It wasn't intended, but you're misusing that prescribed medication, right? Then we step up to abuse. So abuse would be on abuse side, it's not necessarily that you're having an abusive relationship with the drug or alcohol necessarily. It could get to that point. But it could also be, first of all, if you're not old enough to drink, you are abusing a drug. You are abusing it. If your intention was to have one drink at a party and you've had two, you've already abused the amount that you're taking in. I think a lot of people also forget that there are so many different chemical substances that we actually abuse often, not just heavy drugs and alcohol. There's caffeine, our coffee intake, if anyone has noticed, they get withdrawals just from missing that one cup of coffee they rely on, right? So
That's wrong.
yeah, we'll have a different type of intervention. But yeah, so I think it's very interesting to see those dynamics, and it's so crucial to have those defined, especially during the pandemic, because a lot more people are actively abusing and using those substances, and a lot of them are saying, well, I'm bored, or what else is there to do? The final one would be dependency. So this is, you can't function without it. You are depending on that substance to sleep, to eat, to go to school, to go to work, even to have a certain attitude. Maybe you feel that you're more interactive when you're on a certain substance, so you're going to use it more often. I think the second we go into substance, I think a lot of people just jump to a lot of conclusions or make assumptions. And that's why I think it's so important that as a panel, we make sure to better define and better educate. Because substance use, substance misuse, substance abuse, substance dependency, it's a lot more common than even now. So it's just so important that in a given day, and I apologize, I'm very passionate about substance use. I've been speaking a lot to the kids, especially about vaping. That's been the biggest issue. We are actively drug testing for nicotine use, and we have so many teens that are coming in that the parents are saying, well, they're not using any drugs. You're using and abusing nicotine, and you're basically chain smoking at the levels that you're at. That's a chemical substance that we are abusing and we're misusing. Again, it's illegal for most of the people coming in, and the amount of intake, I mean, it's like you're having 2 packs of cigarettes in a given day. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I just wanted to make sure to address those different levels and to provide the differences between those, because it's really important.
So currently we're doing both virtual and in person. We're still offering both those services to clients and whatever their current situation is. With regards to post-pandemic, I know that there is a group that goes to specific schools, I think on a weekly basis, in order to speak to the students, and William and Hera can talk about that more. And currently the groups that we do offer are, as Hera mentioned, the intensive outpatient groups, which are 9 hours of group weekly for the substance abuse clients that are usually teenagers.
So we also offer outpatient level groups, which is both, we have substance groups, we have mental health groups. As far as for the in-person, I just want to, make sure that we are following, the safety guidelines, CDC procedures and policies. We are wiping down every surface constantly. We are making sure that clients, as soon as they walk in that door, they are washing hands. We are testing, taking their temperature. We are keeping that distance. Now, we've all been distancing together, so we're in the clear right now. But of course, when we have we do have masks. We also have shields. Those are a lot of fun. So when we have clients that come on site, we are making sure we're maintaining that distance. We even have it marked down on the floor to make sure that we're all following. We actually provide telehealth services all up along the state of Florida. So as long as they're within the state of Florida, we can provide telehealth services. We have some of our teens that have graduated, they're off to college. We have teens that are at Tampa University. We have them at UCF, we have them at UF. So we're able to continue providing those services depending on the level of care and their need. So that's pretty important. We feel that once we've established that relationship, that we're able to continue through college and help them through that transition as well.
Absolutely, and that's really important, especially even without any, anxiety or depression or anything, that transition can put anybody over the edge. So, your kids, even though they can't wait to get out of the house, they're out and now they have to do absolutely everything on their own. And even if they went with some friends, they're going to meet new friends, the teachers, the systems, everything. So the beauty of the telehealth, even if they didn't need the telehealth before or utilize it, they can continue the care or establish new care, with centers like ours, just to help walk them through that process, help them. We're really big, and Kara, always explains on the mindfulness techniques, these tools, coping tools that will just help you deal with the day-to-day struggles. And again, it doesn't have to be a mountain, it could be a hill. So it doesn't, you don't have to wait till you're at that 10, as we mentioned. There was a question as far as insurance. So we do accept Medicaid, as well as we are in network for most of the major medical carriers, and with a lot of insurances, there is also some out-of-network benefit. If you have an out-of-network benefit plan, you have some coverage there. So that's another advantage, to help soften the cost of behavioral health, because we know that it could be very expensive, especially when you're dealing with long-term or just a continuation of care. In addition, we do have a sliding scale, and we do have some financial assistance as well. So we try to cover everything because our focus is to really make an impact and help our kids. We don't want to turn anybody away. We know, and as for those that know me, know that I'm really big in statistics and looking at numbers, but we know that 1 in 5 kids have a behavioral health issue in Broward County. Nationally, it's 1 in 10, but for some reason here in Broward County, 12 months of summer, I don't understand. We have 1 in 5 kids have that. And out of that, if you figure only 50% of the kids are having care, and we're not even seeing them. We still have room to see these kids. And so where are they? People that we talk to on, whether our friends, schools, parents, they're always wonder, well, how do they find, good care? So, and sometimes we might not be a fit, but we want to be that place where you can go to. And even if your kids are not fit, we will help direct them to find the place for that. So, never think that, oh, it's not what we need or we don't know. We have a great team here. Cece, who's our CEO, is a big advocate of helping people. She spends hours on the phone, even when they're not clients of ours. So, we're really big in making sure that we help the families in need.
To reiterate, we're not the type to just take everyone. We make sure that we're fit for you, as well as that you're fit for us, that we're able to provide you with the services that you need. But we also don't leave you hanging. We provide, healthy referrals where we've actually worked with someone at that location, where Cece, our CEO, has toured the facility herself, or we've been involved with them one way or the other. So I think that's a huge difference. I'd also say the fact that we do mandate that family therapy piece for everyone under the age of 18, that, of course, over the age of 18, we would love to do family work, but we're making sure that if you're under the age of 18, that this is not for just that child to get that care. It's to make sure that we are shifting gears in the entire family and creating healthier dynamics, you know? So I think those are some big ones. We're also all master's level clinicians, which I think is super important. And, you know, again, if you look at, you know, our age range, you know, we're able to connect with the teens and the kids. You know, we're able to get to that level with them and make them feel like they're not being talked down to, that we're actually able to connect with them. I'd also say that we don't have that kind of sterile environment either. You know, it's not hospital looking. I mean, as you can see, you know, we create these homey, cozy environments. And we've done a lot of renovation work in the clinical building, and I think it looks absolutely amazing. So, you know, we want people to enjoy coming here. You know, what I enjoy is when I walk into the clinical building and I actually see people, you know, smiling, you know, they're not being dragged to come in here. They might start out that way sometimes as teens, but, you know, and they're never going to talk again, and they're talking all 9 hours, you know, so it just, I think that is really what sets us apart from the others. And again, I think Will said it best, is that, you know, our job isn't just to hit that tip of the iceberg. Our job is to really get deep down within there and see what's going on.
But very important is the family interaction. If you don't have the support system outside, it's, you know, as soon as your kids walk outside and don't have that support and reiterating what is being taught here, it's not going to work. And we want, you know, it's just reinforcing the same thing, you know, to help them out. And so the family interaction is very important. And that's something that I know that, you know, Cece's always mentioned from the beginning. If the family's not involved, we can't help your kids.
I was gonna add one more thing to that. The fact that you brought up support systems, I know that we mentioned that like all the therapists and I mean CEO, all the departments are at the Bougainvillea House. I feel like it feels like a family, and it's very welcoming. And not only that, but I think the clients get that experience too, because as we're walking around, we're not just in a little bubble. Like all the therapists, everyone that's at the Bougainvillea House is getting to know all the clients. I feel like what I've seen is that the clients feel comfortable not only with their own therapist, but with everybody at the Bougainvillea House. So I think that also sets us apart too, because I mean, I've worked at other places and I've gone to other places, and you know, people are in and out, they see their therapist, they're done, and so on and so forth. Here I have felt a lot more collaborativeness and just like that family environment. I don't know why when I think the Bougainvillea House, I think family. Well, I guess it's family therapy, but I guess it's the family therapy piece. But I do feel that like that's a big thing that I have seen, is that the clients get to know all the therapists, and I do see that they get comfortable with all the therapists and not just their own. And I think that makes a huge difference in feeling more support and the importance of a support system in their life. So that's all I wanted to add.
They're an A, not a number.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you definitely, the team here, and I think there's a difference also even within the age group that helps the kids to relate to the therapist here. And it's not to, you know, there are a lot of experienced therapists, don't get me wrong. Everybody, you know, there are a lot of great ones. But one of the things that, you know, some of the things that we trigger, or that we, not that we focus, but that we have here is the home, as Hera mentioned, the home-like environment. It is a team effort. Even though you have that individual therapist, you know, there is that cohesiveness that people can bounce back, you know, with other therapists to say, hey, look, this is what's going on. What, you know, what your thoughts are right here. And you know, it is very much, you know, like a family here. And that is, you know, what the presence that we like to bring to the kids. We definitely have our doors open for any of those that want to tour. As been mentioned, we are following the COVID regulations, but I know we are somewhat out of time. But if I can just real quick, no pressure, but if we can leave them with one tip that, you know, you can pass on to the parents that are listening, just one tip that you could.
Start us off, Rocio.
All right, one tip for parents. Okay. So I think that my one tip for parents would be a listening ear. Just open up your ears to just listen to your children and what they are going through. And that's my tip.
Mine is same thing. Don't dismiss their feelings just because, they're going through something. It doesn't mean that it's not as bad as your experience as a kid. We hear that a lot. And even though people have different experiences, it doesn't mean yours is worse or, less intense as your child is.
I think mine would be to, always remember and try and be mindful. Yes, parents, be mindful of the fact that a lot of times behaviors you see, a lot of times the behaviors that you're seeing, it's something else. A lot of times they don't have the words yet to communicate what they're feeling, what's going on. And so those behaviors are there without the words. So, being mindful of that and, same thing, listen.
My one tip would be, remember, you're not their friend, you're their parent.
Yes, I was going to say that one.
You set the structure. You set the rules. You're not their friend. You're not there to be their buddy. You're the parent. You are there to support them. You're there to listen to them. But you're not there to be their friend and to, in all cases and instances, to enable some of the behaviors that we may sometimes see. So remember, be a parent.
I would have to say a big one would be parents, you need to do your own self-care. If you are drowning or struggling, it's going to be really hard to keep everyone else afloat. And plus, children and teens, they learn from what you model. So if you are practicing healthy habits, self-care, they're going to look to you and they're going to pick that up as well. And then just for, pandemic's sake, I would really look into creating some new traditions where you can use more quality time and maybe some time away from all the technology that we've been utilizing to stay in touch. But just some old-fashioned, fort making in the house or something that really just is that time to connect. So that's my action-packed tip for the day.
My tip, and I'll close it out, is not only for parents, but I think for everyone right now is just, be kind to one another, but also be kind to yourself.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you.